It's a little past 5:15, so let's go ahead and get started. And my understanding is that Michelle's going to try and join us as soon as possible. Nancy, is that
Yeah, I spoke briefly with her and she was going to try to make it.
okay?
She was.
Understand. Okay, well, she's picking up from an airline, so that can be tricky. Okay, well, I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is it's a regular meeting in Manatee Springs City Council for December 6th, 2022. And we initially here, we're going to go into an executive session, but we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Judy, would you please call the roll?
City Council members Judith Chandler,
Present.
John Shada.
Here.
Julie Wolf,
Here.
Natalie Johnson.
Here.
Michelle Weatherholt is absent at this moment. Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Present.
And Mayor John Graham.
Present, thank you. And with that, I believe everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda, so I would call for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
The motion is second. Judy, how do you want us to vote? Okay. We'll vote electronically.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. And with that, we move to agenda item E1, an executive session. Excuse me. An executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manitou Springs Home Charter concerning the reimbursement agreement between the Urban Renewal Authority and Holiday Inn. We have a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
And seconded by Councilor Wolf. All in favor? Vote electronically.
Six to zero in favor.
Okay, great. So we'll move into executive session. Take a minute here for technical considerations, during which time I will pass out cookies. Okay, I'd like to get started, please. And for those of you in the audience, thank you for waiting. We appreciate your patience. We had to have an executive session to get some advice from our legal our attorney earlier, so we'll go ahead and we can continue with the meeting at this point. So we are now at agenda item F. It's public comment on non-agenda items. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak to an item that's not on the agenda, this would be the time. Do we have anyone? And Judy, did you receive any emails or anything? Okay. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. So item G, the consent calendar. We've got 3 items tonight on the consent calendar. First is approval of the November 15th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. The second is appointment of Alan Delwich to the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority's Citizen Advisory Committee. And the third is reappointment of Alan Delwich as a regular member of the City Planning Commission. I'd entertain a motion to approve and accept the consent calendar.
I move approval of the consent calendar is read.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. Let's vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that consent calendar passes unanimously. Item H1, hearings. It's a major conditional use permit 2203, a major conditional use for a mobile food vendor at 27 Manitou Avenue, Holly Carpenter applicant. If you would give us your name and address, please.
Sorry, Chelsea Stromberg, Senior Planner. I'm here to present major conditional use permit 2203, major conditional use for a mobile food vendor food truck at 27 Manitou Avenue, otherwise known as the Emerald Fields business. The applicant is requesting to have 1 food truck at a time in the parking lot between the hours of 11 a.m. through 4 p.m. Monday through Wednesday. The applicant has indicated that they would not limit which food trucks could park there, but it is understood that it would only be 1 food truck at a time. The site is zoned commercial with redevelopment overlay. The redevelopment overlay is designed to provide greater flexibility and encourage a mix of land uses. One of the development and design objectives found in code is encouraging pedestrian friendly mixed uses. Food trucks almost exclusively serve pedestrians through walk-up service windows. Additional dining options could promote pedestrian activity from the lodgers residing in the area's high concentration of lodging establishments without impacting parking on site. The business currently offers 75 parking spaces on site and through an off-site auxiliary parking lot. The conditional use permit CU 1408, which allowed Emerald Fields to operate at that location, required 40 parking spaces. It is staff's analysis that the existing parking is sufficient for the existing business as well as the food truck business. We did receive 2 statements in opposition to this application. However, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this with the conditions that only one mobile food vendor is permitted to operate at a time. 2, mobile food vendor hours are limited from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Wednesday. And 3, the major conditional use permit is only valid while a business is permitted and operational at 27 Manitou Avenue. And this concludes my report.
Great, thank you. And council, this is going to be this is a public hearing, so we'll have planning back. But if you have any questions now, this would be an opportunity to ask them. Nancy?
Hi, under the new zoning land use code, it will have temporary permits, correct, for this sort of thing?
So this particular one, if approved, would be grandfathered in under a conditional use permit.
Right, I understand that. What I'm just trying to confirm, thank you, sorry. I'm just trying to confirm, we're expecting a new land use code out shortly, and in that land use code, it will allow for temporary, because currently, if we do approve a major conditional use permit, we can't make it temporary, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Do you mind if I turn around and peek at Hannah for confirmation?
Go ahead.
Hannah has confirmed that it would be a temporary use permit under the future land use code.
Hannah, perhaps you want to add some clarifying comments?
Thank you. For the record, Hannah Vanden Morgan McGuire with the City Planning Department. Yes, thank you, Councillor Fortune. With the new code as it's currently proposed, this request would fall under a temporary use permit.
Thank you. Judith?
I just have a few questions. And these are kind of 101 questions, so bear with me. The applicant uses the word hosting. So that would lead me to believe that the applicant is not going to be renting this space out. Or are they? Is there going to be some kind of rental agreement where, because on the map, there's two different potential locations, which will segue into my next question. But so will these hosting trucks just be invited to come and be on site without any kind of contractual agreement with the Emerald Fields? I was confused about the word hosting.
I apologize for that confusion. I think we may need to ask the applicant what the exact agreement would be between her establishment and the food trucks.
And so I'll go ahead. I think I just have a couple more questions. So, and they're mostly administrative. My second question is, would each food truck have to get their own business license in Manitou?
Yes.
Okay. And I have a question about liability insurance, but that maybe we can come back to that later. But I'm just wanting to that's why I want to know about this agreement. I'm assuming that these trucks would have to have their own separate liability insurance to operate.
Typically, that is the way it works. I am unfamiliar with that particular section of business licensing within the city of Manitou Springs. I have seen that in other municipalities.
Okay. And my last question is, it mentions that each truck will have to have a minimum of one table and one trash can. And I didn't see that on the proposed layout. I'm just wondering, does the fire department take a look at these plans and put their stamp of approval on whether a fire truck would be able to easily access the property in the event of a fire if all of the parking spaces were taken up and a food truck was there? Do they typically look at these kinds of plans and say, yeah, we're good to go?
Typically, that would have happened during the original conditional use and development plan. The way that typically works is the fire department factors it in as if cars would be filling those parking spaces. So my understanding would be that they don't factor the parking spaces themselves into those calculations.
So my only concern about that is that typically, a food truck often has people standing around and some tables and probably I would assume they're going to provide more than one table and at least one trash receptacle. I just wanted to put that out there to factor that in to make sure that were this to be approved, that we are addressing the safety needs should an emergency vehicle need to get on site there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, Natalie?
I'm just piggybacking off of what Nancy was sort of addressing earlier. So just to confirm, because unlike most of the things that come to us, a food truck does not require an investment in permanent infrastructure and some of these other things. So a temporary use, I think is more feasible in this case. For council to say, we'd like to see how this works for a year, if there are traffic concerns and things like that. They could be observed as opposed to how we normally have to do things. So I'm just wondering, that's not a possibility with this.
Not under the existing code. The existing code classifies these uses as conditional uses, which do run with the land. We did, one of the conditions that's recommended by the Planning Commission is that this conditional use permit is only valid while a business is permitted and operational at that location. So that does put a bit of a cap on it. You won't see a vacant building with a food truck there. I know that's not as temporary as you're hoping for, but that's in place.
Mr. Shade?
I noticed in the packet, there are two proposed locations that are just depicted. And it seems like to me, the traffic pattern of that particular location, it seems like there's, from the standpoint of pedestrian safety, my personal opinion is I think those two locations are rather problematic. There's an awful lot of traffic that when you come in on that driveway, you're coming in at a pretty high speed to, you know what I mean, make that left turn there. There's not a lot of right-hand turn people. And I'm just wondering whether there's some other alternative locations that would be more pedestrian friendly for people, because I think people stand around a food truck, they kind of do an order, they kind of wait. You know, they maybe need to use the waste receptacles and things like that. I guess my other question is just from the standpoint of basic, you know, hygiene around kind of food and stuff like that. Is Emerald Fields are they going to provide the restrooms and things like that for people to wash their hands and use the facilities? Or is that only, you know, you usually have to wait in line or something like that?
can't use the bathroom at a medical school.
Julie, raise your
Oh,
hand.
sorry.
John's got the floor. John, you go ahead and then we'll hear
So
Julie.
I'm just interested, how's that going to work?
Typically, food trucks don't have restroom facilities. And it's not a requirement currently that that would be allowed. I do believe Councilwoman Wolf is correct that there are limitations on the public entering the Emerald Fields facility.
Well, that's why I'm asking, is because of the unique business there and who is allowed to enter that facility. Okay. Many times in other locations, there are these kind of amenities around there without essentially the state statutory restrictions of allowing children in a certain kind of business. This business is rather unique.
Sorry, I'm okay.
It's more of a statement. I'm just a little kind of concerned because the reality of it is, I think around food trucks and stuff like that, there usually are these kinds of facilities. Okay, I understand that maybe the food trucks themselves don't provide them. I get that. But I'm just saying, typically speaking, I mean, I do kind of frequent kind of food truck stuff. There are these kind of facilities in the vicinity. And in this particular business, this is going to be a barrier. Thank you.
Julie? Did you want? Oh,
No, I'm sorry that I spoke out of
Oh,
turn,
that's
but my point was already made by the senior planner.
okay, thank you. Okay, sounds like there's no further comments at this time, but she'll be back here in a bit. So if we could go ahead and hear from the applicant then, thank you.
Hello, my name is Holly Carpenter. I live at 23 Dorchester Drive in Colorado Springs. Did you want me just to directly address some of the concerns that you guys have, or did you want to ask me?
Well,
questions
you have an
about it?
opportunity to kind of explain what you want to do. And then
Okay.
if you would field some questions, that'd be good.
Wonderful. So really the intent of this food truck is to help bring people into our business so that we can continue to make the profits that we are accustomed to seeing. With other states legalizing, we are seeing a pretty significant drop in business, and we are aiming our food trucks, yes, at the neighborhood, people who are staying in the hotels around the area, but also to customers 21 and over. Let's see, what else did I want to address? You mentioned that it was medical, it is recreational. So anyone with a valid ID would be able to come in and use those facilities. But to your point, a lot of these food trucks will actually have hand washing stations, hand sanitizer, things like that. I personally have not been to any food trucks that have facilities around them per se. So And then what else did you guys want to know? What else may I address for you?
Questions from council now? Judith?
Yes, if you could address what you meant by hosting, what that means and what the contractual agreement will be between you and these food trucks, and address any, liability or any other insurance
Perfect.
requirements. And then I am a little concerned about the locations as well with regards to emergency vehicles entering the site, and also the same concerns that Councilor Shada mentioned, if you could address that.
100%, 100%. So by hosting, really what that means is there is no contract, there's nothing like that. It would be a schedule where I would be personally reaching out to food truck vendors and saying, hey, I have an opening on Monday. You are allowed to be here from 11 to 4. I would then schedule that food truck vendor to be there from 11 to 4. And there would be no contract or anything like that necessarily. We could do that if that makes you guys more comfortable in it, if there's some kind of legality that helps with that. And then really, as far as emergency vehicles go in the location. So if you've driven by the store, there's the driveway here. The locations that I'm proposing are the furthest from that driveway. That can be seen from the street. However, we have a very expansive parking lot. It goes from the driveway to the front of the building, the side of the building, up the hill into the back of the building, as well as an auxiliary parking lot on the left-hand side when you enter our store. So any of these areas could be used for that food truck if we feel that the proposed areas are unsafe. We have a lot of space. Those are just the areas that I kind of chose because I felt like it would be visible from the road, i.e. would bring in more guests and more tax revenue.
Michelle?
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the 11 to 4. Some of these food trucks have to prep.
Yes.
So even though they're there at 11, they may not be able to serve food until 11:30. And then same with cleanup.
Right.
Does that mean that they're shutting down at 3:30 so they can clean up and leave at 4?
It would, yes. And the expectation, and this is new to me, I've not really dealt with this before, but the expectation would be that when they arrive at 11, they are as prepared as possible to serve guests. And then to your point, yes, they would need to be doing shutdown procedures, whatever is necessary in order to comply with that strict 11 to 4.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I didn't address all of your questions. I'm sorry.
Mayor, may I? Then I have to go in
Okay.
turn, so I believe that.
Okay,
Councilor Ford.
to actually, yeah, Judith, Nancy had her hand up, so we'll do Nancy and then Judith will come back to you.
Hi, first of all, I really like this concept and I want to support it. However, I'm very hesitant major conditional use permits make me very nervous.
Sure.
So I'm wondering how much of an imposition it would be for you. And I would like to evaluate this
Yeah.
before we were to commit to it. So to me, an easy way to do that would be for you to come back when our new land use is in place, which is hopefully in the not too distant future,
Okay.
and reapply for a temporary one. How much of an imposition might that be for you?
I am happy to do whatever makes you guys comfortable in that this is a safe plan for the community. So that would be fine. Really, all it's doing is delaying the potential profits and tax revenue that I'm hoping to get from having a food truck in the
Yeah,
parking lot.
And some of the things that I'd like to evaluate are the environmental considerations. I mean, I think the one letter that came in was very good when it talked about many of them use diesel.
Yes.
Children or young people clustering there, and obviously traffic is always a huge problem. So those are some of the things that I'd like us to put, if we were to do it, I'd like to put in place to evaluate and then make a final decision, and ultimately maybe a major conditional use permit. But that's my concern, but I do like the concept.
Yeah.
Thank you. Judith?
Thank you, Counselor Fortune, because I was going to ask that very same thing, which segues into my question here is I just want to make sure I'm getting a really clear sense of what your concept is here. And that is in your application, you said that you want to host a variety of trucks on a rotating basis, right? So I'm assuming that you'd have different food trucks on those 3 different days. And so if I'm owning a food truck, what would motivate me to want to come in just those hours, have to get a Manitou Springs business license, and then make sure that, you know, I'm covered from a liability standpoint. To me, that's, you know, I think that those things we need to evaluate. So I too would also agree with coming back and taking a look at it and getting a temporary permit perhaps, and then having council discuss it again, which I believe is this month. Is it not the 20th that we are first reading? Is the 20th? So it's coming up.
First reading is the 20th and second reading scheduled in January.
And then to address that, there are not a lot of places that actually allow food trucks, whether it be in Colorado Springs or in Manitou City, Manitou Springs. So that is far and wide a good draw for those food trucks to come and do business here. I have over 30 food truck vendors in line waiting for a yes or a no from you guys in order to do business.
Thank you. Julie?
Does the city code require liability insurance before we'll issue a business license?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time for the applicant? Should be back. Okay. Thank you. You'll have an opportunity to come back
All right, thank
after
you
we
guys.
have public comment.
All right, thank you.
So with that, I'd like to open up the public comment portion of this hearing. So anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this is welcome to do so. We'd ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this? Going once? Judy, did we have any comments from the emails or anything?
I did not receive any.
Yes, we have. I'm sorry, we do have 2 comments, but I mean, in addition.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Apparently there's not interest in public comment. So we can bring the applicant back. If council has questions. Do we have any questions for the applicant? She was just up here. I thought, you know, typically we have some things come up during public comment and the applicant oftentimes wants to clarify things. So anything more? I guess not. Thank you. Very good. Chelsea? This may also be an idle trip as well. You may have answered all of our questions. Council, any questions for planning? Nothing? Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Well, in that case, we can move into the deliberation phase. Council, comments, questions? Julie?
I personally like the idea of waiting until the new code is in effect, and whether or not the temporary food truck provisions will be passed or become part of the new code is yet to be seen. But I prefer to wait because I do prefer the idea of being able to issue, at least initially, a temporary authorization so that it's not a permanent thing that runs with the land up until the time that, you know, there's no business there. On the issue of the liability coverage, though, if we don't require liability insurance for our restaurants and our other businesses in town, I don't think it's appropriate to require them to get separate liability. I don't know if the food truck at the Sunwater Spa has a liability, but we better be consistent if we're going to start forcing liability insurance to be purchased by our businesses, or maybe only by certain businesses. I just want us to be careful, because otherwise we're not supposed to be random in these mandatory things. I do have concerns about the idea of like how much pollution is generated from a food truck, and that seems very like contrary to everything Manitou's been working on and you know, all talk and no action maybe, but we keep talking about sustainability and pollution, and here we are inviting another high polluting business to come in. If we're inviting them or not, I don't know, but that is a concern of mine, but I'd like to kick the can down the road and see what happens after the code is passed, the new code.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, I also gravitate to the idea of waiting until we have the new land use code. It seems to me that since we're really on the eve of making a change that's been 20 years in the making, that we could start off with a nice clean start. I guess a second question I have is food trucks. If we have this food truck and more food trucks, are we undermining our existing restaurant businesses, the brick and mortar people who, not only collect sales tax, but they pay property tax too? I think there's a matter of having some loyalty to those organizations, but perhaps that's a lesser point. Any other questions or comments from council? If not, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Shada?
I move that we deny this application, but we invite the application to resubmit with the fees waived under the new code.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by, it's a tie vote. Tie, okay. Great. So it's seconded by Julie and or Natalie. Any further discussion? Okay, so the motion is to deny, at present to invite the applicant to come back when we have the new land use code with a waiver of fees. Okay, Judy, I think we're ready to vote.
We have a 7-0 vote in favor.
Okay, thank you. So Holly, you're invited to be back. Hopefully we'll have the land use code tentatively at the second reading would be the first meeting in January, which I believe is January the 3rd. So if we make schedule, we'll be roughly in a month. So thank you. Okay, let's move on. Our next item, H2, is second reading and public hearing of ordinance number 2222, an ordinance adopting the annual budget and appropriating funds for fiscal year 2023 and amending the annual budget for fiscal year 2022. And we have our finance director, Becca Davis. Becca?
Good evening. It's been a long road, but we're finally here at the second reading and public hearing of the ordinance appropriating funds for the 2023 budget and reappropriating funds for the final amended 22 budget. With the way it stands now, the forecasted ending general fund unassigned fund balance for 2023 is $8,243,706. We've talked about this budget extensively, and hopefully all your questions are answered. But if not, I'll now entertain questions.
Council questions? Judith?
Not a question, just a comment. Congratulations. You put together two budgets. And I have to say that I need to give a shout out to the city administrator. I really appreciated the 8-page memorandum in our packet. I thought that was so well done. And to me, anyone, looking in on the city website, would be an easy way to click on things and get information. And I would love to see that continue in the future. But not a lot of people know you put together two budgets for us to take a look at. So really appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? If not, would entertain a motion.
Oh, public hearing.
Oh, excuse me, public hearing. Sorry. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move to public comment then. Sorry. Thank you, Becca. Okay, so I'll open up the public comment portion of this hearing. Anyone who would like to speak to the budget is welcome to do so. Come forward. Okay, if you make your comments, please try to get it done in 3 minutes. Great. And if you give us your name and address.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Debbie Sagan. I live at 523 Crystal Hills Boulevard in Manitou Springs. And I chair the Manitou Springs Urban Renewal Authority Board. You heard our budget presentation at your boards and commissions presentation a little over a month ago, almost a month ago, I guess. And since then, we've had a meeting. Our meeting was held just after you held your first reading of the budget. And we listened to your discussion with great interest. And so I was sent on behalf of the whole board to talk to you tonight about the idea of creating an agreement together between the City Council and the URA to execute the projects that we presented in our budget. You had some good discussion at your meeting about that on first reading of the budget, and we think that's a great idea. We think it would improve transparency and help us all to work together better to execute the projects that we all think are important to do along the avenue. So that being said, there isn't anything that you need to do to change your budget tonight. I just wanted to get this comment on the record that in the new year, as we adopt our own budget, we would very much like to work on the projects that we all think are most important to execute, that we agree to carry out together.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have a question for you, Debbie.
Oh, yes.
Nancy?
Just to clarify, Debbie, did I understand you to say that you're not asking for anything at this point other than
We don't believe, we don't believe that that's necessary because you actually don't approve our budget. And if the TIF funds that the city is retaining on our behalf remain in your budget, then it's our belief that as long as we have authority in our budget to spend, which we do, right? That's the draft budget that we have before our authority right now. That in the new year, as you're determining how to spend those revenues, to the extent that those expenditures are going to occur in the URA, and you'd like us to partner with you to execute those projects, we could work together to develop an agreement and get that done. Does that make sense? Does that answer your
and I
question?
think that simplifies our decisions this evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Considering all the work that went into creating the budget this year, we did not want to come before you tonight and ask for a change.
Judith, did you have a question for Debbie?
No, just to make sure that I've got this right. It was my understanding that there was consensus of council that the shuttle, the $150,000 for the shuttle would be covered. Is that was you? So we for sure just want to let you in the community know that the shuttle will be covered.
Yes, that was our understanding. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have anyone else like to speak? Hello. So, press the button. When the green light comes on, okay, there, it's active. You can speak. If you give us your name and address, please.
My name is Avik Amin. I'm at 4304 St. Andrews Drive in Pueblo, Colorado. I'm with AAA Hotel Developers. We constructed the Holiday Inn Express that opened in June of this year. As you may know, we did make an agreement with the Urban Renewal Authority for a portion of the city sales tax and,
Sir, could you get a little closer, about 3 inches from the microphone?
oh, okay, sorry. Well, first of all, we wanted to say we very much appreciate the collaborative effort there was between the Urban Renewal Authority and the city to construct the hotel in Manitou Springs. It was the first new construction of a hotel in approximately 15 or 16 years. So it's been a long time. It was a very difficult and expensive project to put together with site conditions, utilities required on site, the extensive boulders removed from the site, adding a parking structure. It was actually has been the largest project located in the Urban Renewal Authority, I think since it's created, at least a private project. We wanted to just reiterate a few points about our project. It simply would not have been built, or we wouldn't have developed the hotel if we saw that the agreement that we made, if there was a portion that wasn't going to be funded, which we don't know exactly what's happening with the city sales tax that we've been collecting and paying back to the city, but those were put into our estimate to construct the hotel. So if that was not going to be part of the consideration, it just simply would not have made sense to construct the hotel as we did. And then furthermore, everything that's going into our project is solely funded by our project only. The property tax that we generate is what is going to be reimbursed to us, as well as the city sales tax. It's only the city sales tax from our hotel. It's not coming from anywhere else in the Urban Renewal Authority. So any risk that there is no risk whatsoever from our project to the city or the Urban Renewal Authority, because we didn't receive any funds upfront on this project. Everything was funded by us to complete the hotel's 2 certificate of occupancy. So there was zero risk to the authority or the city or any other entity. But now, as the hotel is open, it's an obligation that we feel should be met because we delivered on the project, and it was in our agreement that this would bring our project to fruition and we would receive the assistance that was outlined in our agreement.
Okay. Could you sum up then, sir?
Essentially, what we're asking for is that the agreement that we came into with the Urban Renewal Authority is funded in full and complied with.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone else? If there's no further interest in public comment, I'll go ahead and close that. And I think council, we're in a state where we can go ahead and deliberate unless if anybody has questions for Becca, we can bring her back. Julie?
I don't know if I need Becca for this because it's such a basic question, but I just want to confirm and also be clear for people who are listening. So the proposed budget that we're being asked to consider on second reading currently has no sales tax to give to the URA with respect to the Holiday Inn, and currently has no sales tax no sales tax from the URA going to the URA, only the property tax. Am I correct about those 2 things?
That's my understanding, but I think Becca can speak with greater authority.
Just to confirm.
For 2023, there is nothing. For 2022, there is kind of close to 400,000 that was already given to the RA in the first part of the year.
Thank you.
Great. Well, since we've got Becca back, Any questions from council? Guess not. I think we're at time to deliberate here. Or to accept a motion.
Move to approve the budget on second reading.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes. I would like to, Becca reported that we'll have a unallocated amount. What is your correct term for that, please?
It's the ending unassigned general fund balance.
Okay, all right, of $8,243,000 approximately, correct?
That is
what
correct.
we're anticipating that to be. And I guess I want to go on the record because I think this council has worked very hard to run a very tight ship and be very fiscally conservative, given the unknowns that we were up against in the election. I also want to remind council that in June of this summer, that we looked at collectively as a body, okay, that the staff submitted to us something short of $7 million worth of capital things. And we have had more that have shown up. And in fact, I'm looking at that spreadsheet right now. We spent an all-day session in which staff led us, I thought, in a really excellent way in terms of describing all those capital things. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think there's sort of kind of, I want to clarify things for the public in terms of that this is a very healthy fund balance. And I think it's a tribute to our staff that we got here this way, okay, in this council, but we have a lot of needs in this community. And on that spreadsheet this summer, okay, we worked through in a very conservative way, all right, and we only allocated 15.25%, okay, of the needs that the staff and the council allocated. So I think, and you know, the mayor can indulge us because he helps drive the agenda process of the council. I hope that we would move quickly in the new year to look at all these capital projects and the additional ones that have come along here. And that we would basically, I don't think I'm saying this from my standpoint, and I'm hoping I'm speaking for the rest of council, that it's not our intent to sit on $8 million, okay, and just watch it grow at 2.5%, some crazy thing. There's a lot of things we need to do in our community that we need to get done with this, okay? And so I think we've heard some things maybe in past meetings that we don't have needs, and I want to set the record straight, okay? And I'm not going to bore you. If you're interested, I think we've had that spreadsheet posted on City Hall. Okay, you can inquire of the council and whatnot in terms of how we made those allocations. But there were whole areas that got no funding whatsoever. Some of those areas were for equipment that our city staff asked for. Okay, we have big projects and big plans in terms of for Soda Springs Park. And I was looking back in that sheet and we allocated nothing in that news thing. And when we got the Park and Rec Board's request for what they want to do down there, okay, it was not 250,000. It was in our original budget request. It's like 10 times that amount. Thank you for indulging my speech.
I guess I should follow up with that. John, I think you anticipated correctly that council, as I see it, I think we have a huge appetite to get some things done. We've certainly throughout most of last year, there was that chilling effect that we worried about the marijuana vote in Colorado Springs. Now that we're breathing a sigh of relief and we have a pretty solid war chest, I think council's interested in getting together and tackling some projects. But that we can certainly get this budget, I think, passed and taken care of, and then we'll get back to the hard work of figuring out how to dole out the money and get the most bang for the buck. Other comments from council? Okay, Natalie?
I am interested in honoring the URA's request to consider, for us to consider collaborating with them on projects. I don't know if that's something we necessarily want to include in the motion, but I would just like to put that out there.
Okay, thank you. Because my sense from Mrs. Sagan's comments was that we really didn't need, they didn't feel like we needed to add it. I don't think we do. I do think the collaboration in the future is a good idea. It doesn't cost a whole lot to sit down and talk, and we can get good work from there. So I think that's a good sentiment, Natalie. Nancy?
I would just say that at our last meeting, when we discussed this, we did agree as a council to incorporate all of their requests, and that's in our minutes from last time, so. I did not include it in the formal.
What does that mean to include all their requests? I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
For
what you're talking-
consideration, since they weren't included the last time for capital improvements, that we would consider all of their requests that they submitted to us for consideration as we have this meeting in the near future.
Can I have some clarification as to what we're talking about? I don't know, maybe I
Yeah.
didn't
Are we-
clean out
It
my
was a
ears
bunch
today.
Last time, and it was, let's see. The redevelopment grants, streetscape enhancement, art pedestals and landscaping. We took out the shuttle contribution, but it was what they requested at when all the boards and commissions presented, they gave us their budget of what they were looking to accomplish in 2023. So at our last meeting, I had originally incorporated these into the motion, and then we decided that it was not necessary to put into the motion. We could just agree as a council to incorporate these into the list of capital improvement projects that we would consider and prioritize for funding.
Oh, you mean for the future?
Yeah,
So you're not talking about a budget change.
no,
You're just saying it's something you want to talk about someday.
yeah, as
okay.
when we consider all the capital improvements that we were talking about, that Councilor Shader was talking about, that these are put into that mix as well, so that they have equal consideration, and whatever criteria we use for prioritization, that these have equal consideration.
And
I
I would
understand.
certainly agree with that, since I had my long-winded speech about the capital things, that in addition is another $2 million onto the pile. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's not a commitment. We put it on the wish list.
It's not, I was just, Natalie brought it up. I think she was looking potentially for a friendly amendment onto the motion. And I was just saying that we discussed this at our last meeting. It is so noted in the minutes that that's what we would do. So, I didn't want to be redundant, that's all.
And I certainly would concur with you that we would add that to our capital spreadsheet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any other comments? Okay, we've had a motion, a second. John, would you like to restate your motion here? I think we're
Oh,
close.
no,
to
it's Julie's motion. I believe she's
Oh, Julie,
moving
okay.
to approve the
I'm
budget.
sorry.
Oh,
Motion to
okay, I
approve
thought
as.
it was yours. Move to approve the budget.
Okay, all right, that was it. Wait, no, it was second. I just
Oh,
just
okay.
Is that
asking to
not
have it
right?
restated because we had a couple of thoughts.
Was that
Okay,
not right?
so we have a motion to approve the budget as is. And the amended budget for 2022.
Yes.
Okay. So let's go ahead and,
So Nancy's right. I move to approve not only the revised 2022 budget, but also the proposed 2023 budget.
I agree with that.
okay. So we're all clear on that now. Okay. Okay.
It's the proper motion.
Okay.
As presented.
As presented. Judy, I think we're ready to vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Becca, thank you. I guess you can all have a sigh of relief. Good work to the city staff. That was a lot of work.
Mayor, may I make a comment? I didn't want to make it part of the public hearing, but Councillor Chandler, thank you for the positive comment, but I have to give all the recognition to Becca. She is the one that really wrote that memo, so she deserves the credit for such.
Okay. Council, we started 5:15. I don't know if you want to push on for a little bit or if you want to take a break. We'll take a 10-minute break, okay? We'll be back at 7:10. Everybody, if we could go ahead and we'll get back to work here. Okay, our next item of business, item I1, authorization for the mayor to sign a acceptance of a donation of 2 sculptures to the city from Crane. And so we've got Ralph Rutten and Patsy Sitzman.
Hello, hello.
Welcome.
Best wishes during the season of giving, which is the reason I'm sitting here. I am going to give you something. I am the treasurer for Crane, and we have gone through major infrastructural changes over the last 8 or 9 months. We have a current assets list that has been my personal baggage and project. And it had not been updated since 2014. So we went through the list. It's now correct. Becca has a copy, Judy has a copy, everybody has a copy. And we want to donate 2 pieces that are on city land that are appropriate for the city of Manitou Springs to own. One, and there are pictures in your packets, page 290 out of your 5 million page packet. 494 actually. One is the Muse, which sits in front of Lulu's right at the top of Becker's Lane. It's a beautiful sculpture. It is right there. I like that one. The other one that we want to donate is the Manny Awards sculpture, which is more than appropriate for the city of Manitou Springs, which is an awards. We all know what the Manny Awards is. So that's it. Becca and everybody wrote a little piece. I'm not going to play kindergarten and read this to you. There is 2 fiscal updates. One, this will cost the city of Manitou Springs $2. Becca and I have already worked this out. We're going to do a debit credit piece back and forth. The values of these sculptures will then be moved into the assets of Manitou Springs. Other than that, we're good. There is probably a less than $10 a month insurance premium increase. The insurance on all these sculptures has long been the city of Manitou Springs' responsibility. Crane is responsible for the maintenance and repair of all these sculptures, and we have nearly 80 now, up to $1,000. We've had exactly 1 repair in 100 years. And we've already given the money. Manitou already has $4,420 from us to cover those costs. So we get little dings, hail, that kind of stuff. So we are here to donate these sculptures and get approval for these, and we'll take care of the administrative part of it for you. And we will continue, I will continue to update and make sure that the current assets list is current. So that's what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Ralph, did you have comments?
Ralph Roughton, 114 Palisade Circle. I'll play the game here. I just wanted to comment that as was in the packet information, that the Arts Council, which was part of, they had their organization, we had the Creative District, and we merged at the start of 2022 to become the Creative Alliance. The Arts Council had contractual obligations with the URA to donate the Muse of Manitou to the city. So we are in regard to that are just following up on that agreement that was already done prior to our merger.
Great, thank you. Council, do you have questions? Yes. Okay, Judith.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I heard that there's a possibility that the Muse could be moved. There was some discussion that it might be moved across the street to there was some.
I regarded it as a rumor. I
Okay.
don't think that anybody has stepped up with the 5 digits to 6 digits that's gonna, or probably at least $5,000 to move it.
Okay, yeah.
It's going to be expensive and it's going to require traffic control and cranes and
Yeah.
all kinds of lovely cones. Nothing has happened.
I just want to go on record. I think it's lovely where it is.
I do too.
Yeah, I was under that impression too, that the Muse was going to be moved over to the Holiday Inn. And then I also heard that maybe the Manny sculpture was going to be moved someplace, but from the narrative in the council packet, it sounded like they're just going to stay where they're at. That's,
Nobody has approached us. Nobody's approached you. It's just all rumor at this point in the game.
okay, well, it helps to have you here to clarify that. Council, any other questions, comments? Okay, Nancy, please.
I move we authorize the mayor to sign acceptance of donated sculptures, Muse of Manitou Springs and Manny Awards as part of the city's permanent art collection. And thank you to Crane for these lovely Manitou specific sculptures. This isn't part of I just wanted to say that's my very favorite sculpture like of all time is the Spirit of Manitou. So thanks.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is second. Any further discussion? If not, I think we're ready to vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Great.
Thank you
Motion.
very much.
Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously.
My best
Good.
wishes for the holiday season.
Great. Yes. Best wishes to you. Thank you for coming down and you clarified a few points. That was helpful. Okay, next item, consideration of resolution number 1922, a resolution establishing a general tax levy for the purpose of raising revenue for the general operating fund and the voter approved mill levies for other funds of the city of Manitou Springs. And again, Becca Davis, our finance director, has the floor.
Okay, so before I can certify the mill levy with El Paso County, which the deadline is December 15th, City Council must approve a resolution establishing the mill levy for the next year. Now, a mill for 2023 will be $87,043, and the mill levy for 2023 will be 12.988. I've got extensive explanation about the mill and break it out and everything in my memo, but I'm not going to go into depth about it, but we'll entertain questions if you need any clarification.
Anyone seeking clarification? Judith?
It's my understanding it's a little less, right? Look like it's less. So just want to let everyone know that.
Yes,
Right.
it's a little bit less. I think last year it was like 12.999 and now it's 12.988. But the actual mill itself, it's higher than last year.
Any other questions? I think this is pretty straightforward. Yeah. Do entertain a motion?
I'll go ahead and move that we approve resolution number 1922, a resolution establishing a general tax levy for the purpose of raising revenue for the general operating fund and the voter approved mill levies for other funds of the city of Manitou Springs.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote.
7 to 0 in favor.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're going to make the December 15th deadline for all this stuff. Great. Okay. Item number 3, sale and purchase agreement for 848 Manitou Avenue. And we'll have Hannah, our planning director, for that.
Great, thank you, Mayor Graham. Hannah Van Nimwegen McGuire with the City of Manitou Springs Planning Department. We've been discussing the purchase of this property for a few months now. And before the council today is the actual agreement. The agreement should reflect what we've been discussing over the last few months. We did complete the phase 1 that was part of the packet. The phase 1 concluded that the property did have a gas station on it, but could not find any record on whether the underground storage tanks had actually been removed or if they existed. So at the time, gas stations use both above ground and underground gas tanks. So we do have equipment to spy if those tanks are on the property. We're working with Chase to get approval of allowing that equipment on the property. So we should have a response, we should know pretty soon if there's something there. But we can move forward with the purchase and sale agreement in order to enter escrow. From that point, we will have 70 days to close. So we've done a lot of the due diligence already. I would expect it to be less than 70 days, but we did build in a lot of cushion just in case. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Julie?
So in summary, what, if any, contingencies would allow us to back out?
That's a great question. I would like to defer to Jeff.
Yeah, this has the sort of standard title issue contingencies and then physical inspection contingencies. So if there's any title concerns that we have that can't be cured, we can pull out. And if there's any findings that we make for the physical environment that makes us concerned, well, we can pull out as well. You're welcome.
Judith?
I'm not expecting you to know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway, just out of curiosity. If there were to be one or more gas tanks underground, do you have any idea of what that would cost the city to remove them?
That's a great question. I don't have an estimate on hand. However, I do know that it happens more often than you would expect. So it depends on whether those tanks still have fuel in them, if they've been leaking this, that, and the other. However, if they're empty, it would be a simple, relatively speaking, removal. But we could start getting estimates if we found them.
Yeah, and I haven't looked into this recently, but the state does have what's called a LUST fund, leaking underground storage tank fund. And there is a potential that you could get reimbursement from the state or some contribution from the state to remove them. I think that ultimately, the cost of removing them depends upon if they're leaking and how far they've leaked, and it can get interesting for sure. But I have had clients use that fund to pay for removing tanks in the past, but there's some issues with it. So I think we find them, we want to look at that further.
Nancy?
Just the other thing was are you still planning to take samples of the dirt to see if there's any contamination? It looked like that was one of the minor concerns.
That wasn't part of the scope of work. However, we could look into that further.
Well, I just wanted to know if I had read it in the report that they were potentially recommending it, even though it was quite minor. But I didn't know what the plan was from the city perspective. The staff's perspective, I should say.
Right. So we didn't anticipate, or we weren't anticipating doing that since we aren't planning on digging into that ground with any building additions or anything of that nature. However, we could go and do a soil sample and test it. So we know for sure. That could be part of the 70-day window to complete.
Yeah, I just remain concerned that, we have a proposed potential use for the site. But if we ever did decide as the city that we wanted to do something else, I flat out don't know the potential for concern. So I'm depending on you guys to.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in for a second. There's two uses on the property that always give me a stomachache: gas station and dry cleaner. And dry cleaners are notorious for having contaminations on them too. So I think it probably would be worthwhile spending a little money to do some soil sampling to make sure that we don't have any other kinds of contamination. And we can talk offline about that as well.
Julie?
So am I correct in assuming that we don't have to remove anything unless there's a problem? Like, in other words, or is it considered, best practices to go ahead and remove an empty non-leaking tank just to do it, or what's recommended?
Yeah, I think it's definitely best practices to remove it. And I think that if we're going to be buying property that has tanks on it, we'd want to know what it takes to remove them. We'd want to know if there's contamination, because we could have liability for the leaking tanks. I think we'd want to basically incorporate that into what we're going to do. I wouldn't want to just assume we leave them on there and have no liability.
It seems like it would be a good idea to do the extra soils testing and give ourselves a cleaner bill of health.
I have had a client that spent maybe more than 5 years trying to remediate dry cleaning contamination. And it was not cheap. So I think it'd be worth making sure we don't have those issues as well.
Other comments? Entertain a motion then?
I move to approve the sale and purchase agreement for the 484 Manitou Avenue property with the addition of soil samples.
Second.
Motion, we have seconds, okay. Any further discussion? Let's vote then.
Seven to zero in favor.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Hannah. Okay, so that brings us to that time in the evening we call council correspondence. So does anybody have anything? Julie?
Longer working. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to explain, because it didn't come up in discussion last meeting, that the reason I voted no on the 5% employee raise is because I thought they deserved 8, since that's the inflation rate and since we can afford it. But what I will do instead is see if we can't find consensus or a majority to reconsider that vote when we go back and look at the amended budget, to see if we can give the staff more than the 5% increase that we've already given them. I also wanted to address that there's a resident who's been very disturbed about the fact that he made some complaints on SeeClickFix as an anonymous complainer, and he received a response from Roy calling him out by name as they were kind of arguing in SeeClickFix about whether the city had done a good job resolving the problem or not. And he was very upset that his name was used. He felt like that was a bullying tactic that it discourages residents from speaking their mind about concerns they have, because they don't want to be picked on by name. So I agreed to raise this as an issue and ask that that practice be discontinued by the city. I realize I have no control over requiring how the city implements their SeeClickFix system, but this gentleman thought if people are going to be called out by name on the SeeClickFix system, that will discourage other people from making complaints, because, well, that's all.
Nancy?
Yeah, Julie, regarding the 5 or the 8%, I would like some clarification, because it was my understanding that it was an 8%, 3% COLA increase and a 5% merit increase. So we're looking for an 11% overall raise?
So yeah, I was looking at just the COLA at 8 as opposed to the combined amount as 8 is what we had discussed, since the COLA is cost of living increase and 7.7 is the projected inflation rate for 2022 last I read. So that was why I voted no. It's not because I wanted the employees to not get the 5%. I wanted them to get more, but then the question was called and we never voted on calling the question or not. We just voted on the underlying thing. So it all just kind of happened. And so I wanted an opportunity to explain why I voted no.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, couple things. I think it was November the 18th, the Manitou Springs Police Department had an awards banquet. I was pretty impressed. They gave out a number of awards. They have the Medal of Honor. We had 2 or 3 officers recognized for saving lives. We had one of the ones that really kind of I thought was particularly significant. There was a situation where a family was being evicted from a short-term motel, and the responding officer helped those people find a place to stay at another motel in town. And then he helped them move. He used one of the department's pickup trucks to help move their possessions from the first motel to the other. And he didn't have to do that. So Chief Otto had mentioned that, and gave that as a good example of community policing. So, I was favorably impressed. I think council would benefit from seeing the presentation Alex Treefy put together, the awards. It's basically kind of a PowerPoint slide. So I think it would be worth 15 minutes of our time to look at it. I was pretty impressed with what the department's been doing. I think it's what we had talked about when we hired Chief Otto, and it's coming true. So if there's no objection, I'd like to get that where we can take a look at it, and we'll schedule for a meeting at some point here in the next few months. Also, this morning, Denise, Roy, Becca, John, I believe it's Ayers from the water department, and myself drove down to Pueblo when we made a grant application presentation to DOLA for $750,000, which would be used for the water tank. I don't know that we'll get the whole amount, but hopefully we'll get some of that. It was really Denise and Becca who put that together. So Roy and I just stood there. John answered some good questions, so that was a good thing. Also, at the beginning of the year, we do our liaison assignments. So council members, I'd ask you to think about that, give it a little bit of thought, see if you're happy with the assignments that you've had this last year, if you want to move around a little bit. That's all I've got. Yeah, Judith?
Can I ask a quick question about the grant, the 750,000? It's my understanding that we're using the funds from I don't know the name of it, but that President Biden has allocated. Are we not using?
Yeah, this was for several projects. It's for the water tank. It's for the repair of the water tank, and it's for the water treatment plant, which came to about 4 million overall. We asked for 750,000. We do have 1.3 million in the ARPA funds. So it was a 3-part project that we were asking. We have 82% match, which is a great thing. So we were asking for a hand up and not a handout. And I think the presentation went very well.
Well, thank you for doing that. And when will we know if we are the recipient of the grant? Do you know?
I have a general idea next week. I will not know how much, but I'll have an idea if we're getting some funding or not. And then it will probably be in January.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for council correspondence?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Are we doing anything with the parade on Saturday? I know you were talking about that. Do we know anything?
We're doing a couple of things. We're going to have the bucket truck in because the bucket truck will be here. So we'll have the new bucket truck with some lights on it. The police will be doing some things, and so will the fire.
Okay, in the last few years, there's been a city council, Adventures Out West has provided a vehicle and council's ridden on it, but maybe they're not doing that this year.
They usually reach out to you, Mayor. They don't reach out to me. So I don't know if you've had any correspondence with them or not.
I haven't heard anything.
Okay. We can reach out to them and see.
Okay, so, so stay tuned. You may get an email later this week inviting you to ride in the Christmas parade. That's the Saturday night. Was it 6 o'clock or 5:30 or?
I believe 6 o'clock, but I can send out the email to make sure.
Yeah, I want to say 6, but okay. Well, if there's nothing else from council, let's go to the city administrator's report.
Mayor, do you want to mention the February 14th meeting? The strategic planning budget meeting that you were talking about? Do you
Yeah,
wanna
let
mention
me,
it?
I'm glad you mentioned that. So in looking at agendas, we were thinking that the middle of February, actually February 14th, it's a Tuesday night, that would be a good time to go over kind of some strategic planning, think about what we want to get done this year or this thing, in the coming year.
On Valentine's Day?
well,
That's
that-
not very romantic, Mr. Mayor.
No, I know it's not. I know. So that's why we're asking now. And I probably would have forgotten it. And Denise, thank God, reminded me. So the other option, we could move the meeting to another time, or we could take that night off, or we could have a very abbreviated meeting. This is what. So tell me what you want to do. We can do the strategic meeting later on, or we can do it another time?
14th is fine with me.
14th, okay. Okay, we've got, some-
It's teasing you. If your wife is fine with it, I'm fine with it.
well, I'm never sure. I'm never sure what it takes to get a passing grade at home sometimes. We'll tell you what, let's plan on doing it on February the 14th, but if you have a better idea, we've got a little time to rethink this, okay?
And Mayor, we were going to try to start early and serve dinner because you were looking at going through the budget.
Yeah.
As Mr. Shada said earlier, and doing some things like that. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Okay, yeah, let's see. We were thinking maybe starting, what was it, 4:30, 5 o'clock?
5:15, if that's the
Five-
earliest we could do, because I know that's the earliest for some, but 5:15 instead of a Saturday, I think was the thought.
Yeah, again, the thought there was to try and avoid a Saturday because yeah, Nancy?
Yeah, it sounds like this will be a very unpopular opinion, but I just find it a little bit more easier to discuss things like the budget and allocation of resources on a weekend and not a Tuesday night, but that's just a personal opinion. So but I did want to voice it.
No, that's fine. And I'd like to get your opinions. I think we want to do something that's reasonably comfortable and certainly productive. So. Michelle?
I can do weekends. I just need a little bit more advance notice. Like if we could start like planning January, February for September, October for budget. And then strategic planning, yes, I can be here at 5 PM on the 14th. If I know, within the next couple of weeks that's what time we're starting.
Okay. Let's all think about it this week, and next week we'll take a poll and make a final decision. Julie?
Are you anticipating that we would simply have that extra 45 minutes to talk about the budget, or would the rest of the evening also be devoted to that, just in terms of duration? What did you have in mind?
The whole night would be devoted, to that one subject area.
Oh,
And I mean, I don't know that we would necessarily solve all the world's problems in one evening, but I think we could make pretty good, decent progress. Judith?
I just want to say that I do agree with Counselor Fortune. I do think that when we're talking about the budget, that I can put real fresh eyes on it on a Saturday. If the last budget retreat was any example, I think we did a phenomenal job, but we were here most of the day. So, and the other thing I'm just going to throw out there, since we're talking about two things, strategic planning and the budget, which I would like to see us go into early 2023 with a work session focused on our vision and our core values. I was going to bring it up in the executive session, but I think this is a good time to just put that out there as that could be a work session. Also, it could be a city council evening. So just want to put that out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. Well, in that case, we have one piece of business left, and that's an executive session. I'll read the title and then call for a motion. An executive session to discuss a personnel matter regarding an employee pursuant to 5.1A of the Manitou Springs Municipal Charter. The executive session concerns the annual performance review of the city administrator. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion, okay, motion a second. Let's vote.
Seven to zero in favor.
Okay, great. So we will go into executive session as soon as we can make the technical changeover.
I usually don't stick around for these unless council wants me to. It's up to you.
Does
All right.
council?
I'm not
Council-
begging to stick around. Happy to go.
So council, we can let Mr. Parker go home and, yeah, okay.
All right, thanks very much.
Can Denise go home too, or are we bringing her back in?
I think what I was going to do is ask Denise to wait outside and then quickly poll council to see if you want her to stick around later. We could do that.